I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you to the Sarasota County School Board meeting on this Tuesday, June the 2nd. Please rise for a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Cochran, Superintendent's report.
Good afternoon. First up on the superintendent's report will be an update on the superintendent search. So John Reichert is here virtually, and requesting an update. Dr. Holder is here in a minute. Take it away.
Thank you very much. We have a draft agenda for you to look at today, and I'd like to go ahead and get started just by giving you an applicant profile of our applicants. We ended up with a total of 34 applicants. We have had up to this point 3 withdrawals. Our applicants represent 14 states and the District of Columbia. 21 of them have doctorate degrees, 5 are current superintendents, 6 are former superintendents, and we have 8 who are currently at the associate level superintendents or equivalent. And my data that I have for you has not been verified. This is just from a summary of what we've looked at. As far as the number of applicants, just for your information, the recent Volusia search we did had 40. Flagler had 35. The last time we did St. John's, we had 30. And the last time we were here with Sarasota with you, we had 49, and 1 did drop out. So I think our numbers are within the range of what we were anticipating. Any questions on our applicant profile? Yes, ma'am.
We've got less numbers this time than we had the last time you did our search, but I think we have even more qualified candidates than we had at the last search. And you said there were qualified candidates out there looking at a superintendent's position in Sarasota or in Florida, and I'm glad we trusted your judgment. I'm very pleased with the applicants you've brought forward, or that have come forward.
Well, thank you very much. We have been talking with several people, and during that last week, as we always say, those applications were coming in, and John Reichert was busy up to midnight processing applications, so we are very pleased with the field. We have a very high-quality field of applicants. We have everyone from a teacher to a 2-term commissioner of education in different states, so we're very pleased with that. I'd like to also commend the board for their selection of our committee, our Citizens Advisory Committee. Some of you might have tuned into that meeting, but the first meeting went extremely well. Tonight, we're going to be having our first official meeting, and that's going to be at 6 o'clock. And I wanted to, you have a copy of the timeline with you, but I wanted to just talk a little bit about the timeline and bring us up to speed on how the search will progress from here on. Tonight we have the meeting, and the committee is going to go ahead and narrow the field of applicants. And we don't, as you know, we don't give them a number of applicants. They're going to narrow the field. And then the second meeting we have is June 9th. And at that point, the committee may or may not finish their work. If they finish their work on June 9th, then after the meeting is complete, we will forward to the school board the list of candidates that they feel should proceed. So be ready on June 9th if they finish that evening. If they don't finish that evening, because we don't know for sure, then we will be sending you their recommendations on June 16th. Now, there's a board meeting on June 16th, and we previously talked about needing a board meeting on June 17th. If the committee finishes their work on June 9th, then on June 16th, the board will act on the committee's recommendations. The board could either add or delete those individuals that they recommend. But if the committee meets on June 16th, then we'll have to have a meeting June 17th to go ahead and take board action on the committee recommendations. Now, here's where it gets very tight. So on June 16th or 17th, after the board makes their decisions, Mrs. Messina that night will email questions to the semifinalists. 3 of the questions we've already determined from board members will be answered by video. 2 will be written. And I believe we have all of the questions, except one may not be totally finalized, but I know that will be done. Then what will happen is they will have only a few days to go ahead and get the responses back to Mrs. Messina. And that'll be on the 21st, June 21st by 9 o'clock. Now what'll happen is Mrs. Messina she has a Vimeo channel. So all those videos and their responses to their questions will be posted, so they'll be open to the public and the board meeting and the board members. So on the June 22nd, and I know it's going to be a pretty tight schedule for board members, the board members will have that day to go ahead and review that information that they see, the videos and the questions. And then on June 23rd, the board would select the finalists. And we talked about anywhere from 3 to 5 finalists. And we will facilitate that process on June 23rd. So I just wanted to make sure the board is aware that on the 22nd, it's going to be a busy day because you'll have this information to go ahead and review, and it'll also be open to the public. On the 23rd, Mr. Hardy is also going to review a shell contract, which he has in the process of developing. And what I'd like to do now is just talk a little bit about the schedules, and because we've already gone through those. But what'll happen is on June 30th, then, the finalist would arrive at the Embassy Suites, and we always invite spouses if they would like to come. And then there wouldn't be any activities for them on the June 30th. On July 1, when the finalists are selected, every one of the finalists will get a personalized schedule from Mr. Reichert. They will have their own personalized schedule. July 1 is the date that the board members interview the candidates together. All of 5 board members have already selected topic areas, those 5 areas. And I know some of you are busy working on questions right now, and then whatever the board questions are, we will produce a document for you, an interview guide. Any other questions or follow-up questions, you certainly can go ahead and ask. Also, during that day, and again, this is through the outstanding coordination of your technology team and your television station, people in the community can submit questions that are emailed or texted or called into a number. We're working on this process. And Ryan from the Herald Tribune is also going to help us publicize this. So all during that day, while these candidates are being interviewed here, people, if they have questions, they can go ahead and send those to us. Then that evening, Andrea will be working at your television station studio, and there will be a schedule for all of the finalists when Andrea will ask them questions, and those will all be live, so people can tune in on that. And so the questions that Andrea will ask are questions that come forward during that day, and we'll try to answer as many of those as possible. Now, this is going to be in place of the community reception. Remember, last time we had at Riverview High School, it was a big success, but we can't do that this year because of the guidelines that we have in place. So we think this is going to be a good alternative to get community input. Board members, do you have any questions about this process which we're working on right now?
Mrs. Brown?
Now, I understand when we are interviewing the candidates, we'll be doing it one at a time?
No, yes, you'll be doing
Or
one at a time, and the candidates will be physically present, and that will all be televised. And then the opportunity for community people who are watching those live interviews, the candidate will be right here, will be able to send questions to Andrea so she can go ahead and get the questions all ready for the evening that night. Yes.
Would you please,
it's-
excuse me, would you please put Mrs. Ziegler back up so I can see if she has a question?
Sure.
So to follow up on that then, so we expect the public to be watching and then ask questions that might come up from what we're discussing, or they might have additional. But I
Correct.
truly think that the way that we're going to be able to do this might be a more valuable interaction, and I think more people might get to see and understand who these candidates are, because I was at the ones at Riverview, but we really didn't have much time to interact and to really ask any deep questions. So I think even, though, this wasn't originally planned, I think the public will actually get a chance to have a more in-depth understanding of who these candidates are. Plus, they don't have to leave their home, so perhaps we'll have even more people looking and talking to them than we would have had before.
Yes, Mrs. Corcoran.
Mrs. Corcoran?
So the plan is for us to develop. So the plan is for us to develop a form, so when somebody submits their question, they don't necessarily have to watch the proceedings if they have a burning question that they're.
I know.
You can't hear me?
No, he just went in to tell him
Okay.
that you're not on.
Do you want me to talk really loud? I can.
Something is, go ahead.
So,
There we go.
oh, there we go. There we go. Ooh. So the I am. So the plan will be to develop a form, because if there is a large amount of public input on questions, this will give the FSBA team an opportunity to find the themes with which, if we may not be able to ask every individual question. So that is the hope, that there will be far more questions. Those questions will be asked of every candidate. And we'll have the other finalists in a green room or an ante room so they can't hear what the others' answers are.
So we're very excited about this process, and I will tell you, because of the circumstances we're under, this is a new. We're doing a lot of new.
We're setting
uses.
precedents.
We are. We really are, and I think this is the first search probably in the entire country that's at this time going right now, that we're very excited about it. And again, we couldn't do anything without your team here working with you. The next thing we want to talk about is, how are we going to do tours? Okay? Using the guidelines. So again, Mrs. Corcoran and her team have come up with an idea here, which we want to make sure everybody's on board with. So, Mrs. Corcoran.
Okay, so the last time we had a search, we had a community member and take the candidate around and show them our community. What we were thinking this time that we would do is we would have buses outside. So say we have 4 finalists. We would have 4 school buses sitting outside. We'd put banner signs that, say, congratulations or welcome finalist and whatever their name is, so that they know which bus is theirs. We would have a member of superintendent's cabinet, a principal, and a school district administrator who would attend the tour with them, as well as, you know, the finalist and whatever family member or members they bring with them, and then the bus driver. So we do the same kind of tour as we've done in the past. We take them to lunch, depending on which part of the day their tour falls under, and then bring them all back here. So they'd all start their day here, they'd all end their day here, and we make sure we have them here during their interview time. So.
But we were thinking, would that not be neat to have a bus, and then the candidate's name is right on the side of the bus? Kind of a really neat,
That'd be-
as they're touring around in the county. I think it really would be a kind of a special event. So, and then we'll know whoever we select has been on a school bus to make sure they're on there. So, I'd like Mr. Reichert to maybe make a few comments at this point on the schedules, because of course we don't know what schedule we're going to be on until after we figure out how many finals we're going to have. So, Mr. Reichert.
Dr. Vogel, yes, you know, we've provided the district with samples of 3 schedules. One if you have 3 finalists, 4 finalists, or 5 finalists.
Right.
Again, your Wednesday,
Jamil's
where you
taking
kick
care of
off on July 1st. Candidates, the finalists should arrive there at 8, but have their continental breakfast that morning, and then the board begins their first interview at 8:30. Again, assuming there are 4 candidates. And while candidate A is interviewing with the board, then candidates C and D would start their school community tours. Then at 10:30, candidate B would come in for the board interview. And then while A begins his or her tour after the morning interview. And we kind of proceed through that alternative options and schedules for the rest of the day and finish up at 4:45 if there are the 4 finalists. And then we move into the virtual community reception at 6 o'clock. We have that scheduled to run till 7:30. So that would be from 6 to 7:30 on the Wednesday. That Thursday morning, again, the candidates come back to the district office at 8, again, for a light continental breakfast. And then the board begins their one-on-one interviews. And depending on the number of finalists, if you have 5 finalists, then of course the board members will have back-to-back 1-hour interviews with the finalists until the lunch hour. Then after the lunch hour, they'll finish up with the remaining 2. If they're less than 5, then of course, with 5 board members and say only 4 candidates, there will be one scheduled for 1 or more board members where there may be an hour break before you move into your next interview. So that is just a quick overview of the schedule, the interview schedule. But a lot of it depends on, you know, what number of finalists the board does elect to bring in, 3, 4, or 5.
Mrs. Corcoran?
So I just wanted to, on the potential for 5 finalists, the turnaround time from the last interview ending at 5:30 and the start of the community forum over at STC is only 30 minutes. I'm not sure if the staff who are going to be present here, who also need to be at STC, will be able to get set up in time. So that particular community event may have to be pushed back 30 minutes or so, just because of the timeline you may be following. So we can maybe adjust that a little bit if it ends up that you have 5 finalists.
Okay.
That's correct. And normally, the whole order we use is based on the application number. So if they're number 3, then they would go first for the interview. But we might have to do the same thing. If one of the applicants who has the 5:30 finishes at 5:30 here, if there's 5, we may have to put that person at the end so they don't have to just run right over there and the 6. But we'll go ahead and handle those logistics.
It could be adjusted.
We just want the board to know that, you know, everything has to be a little bit flexible at this point until we decide how many finalists we have.
Yep.
And ultimately, we'd like for the finalists to not be able to have an opportunity to view other finalists when they're speaking.
Right.
You know, that's kind of the big thing.
Right, but when we have it, where we're having it, I guess they have a green room or so we'll have that all taken care of on that. So your team has thought of a lot of details on this. So I think, of course, July 14th, the board makes their selection, and then contract is negotiated and approved on July 23rd, and then we'll have a new superintendent soon thereafter.
Bill, we have an A team.
We do, absolutely, for sure.
And thank you all. You guys have made it really work smoothly. So
Well,
thank you.
It's been a team effort. Are there any other questions that board members have?
Mrs. Ziegler.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. First, sorry I can't be there with everyone. Just to quickly say that I know Superintendent Corcoran knows this, but we were made aware that we had come in contact with someone that tested positive for COVID-19. We took a test and were negative, but out of an abundance of caution, we are quarantining. So I apologize I can't be here, and we make do with what we can. But on that note, I want to commend the FSBA. You know, I listened in on the initial presentation or initiation for the committee. Was that last week or 2 weeks ago? But it was really great. And I think that, you know, the silver lining in this very bizarre time we find ourselves is that it does allow so much more engagement, so much more opportunity for the public to listen in. And so not only on and I look forward to tonight and then the 9th and potentially the next one, but also even as you talked about the interviews and engaging the public forums, you know, the virtual access is really, I think, going to be a very positive step for us. So I just wanted to say congratulations and thank the team for this, because as you said, we're spearheading something that hasn't really been done across the nation, but at the end of the day, I think we're better for it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So that concludes our report, and John Reichert will be leading us off here at 6 o'clock. Thank you very much.
Oh, just one other quick thing, Dr. Vogel. So I'd like to suggest, because as Dr. Vogel mentioned, it's a super compressed timeline. Of course, if the committee needs the third meeting. But if the committee doesn't need the third meeting, their work is done on the 9th. So if you'd want to consider having a super short special meeting on the 10th to either accept, add, or reject any of the semifinalists, then that would be able to allow the semifinalists to get their answers to the 5 questions, the 2 videos, and the 3 written responses to you a little earlier, so that you don't have only a day or 2 to view them all and read them all. So just on the off chance that the committee completed their work a week earlier, it would be a shame to just wait a whole week before we even discuss their recommendations, because you'll see them, and so you'll be able to weigh in on whether or not you think. I mean, it doesn't have to be on the 10th. It can be any day you want.
No, I
but
agree. I agree with you.
then that way it gives the candidates, the semifinalists, a little bit, maybe another day or 2 to be able to get their answers in, and it gives all of you an opportunity to not have to view everything super quick. And if they happen to pick 8 of them, that would be a lot to kind of try to go through in a really short
I think
period
that's a
of time.
great idea. I really do.
We're available the 10th,
Brown.
11th, or 12th, whatever the board would like.
Mrs. Brown?
Yeah, because, we have some areas where there was a gap, and I'm looking at the gap and the time from, when we have the interviews. I think we'll pretty much kind of know, because I thought last time we had the interviews and we made the choice rather quickly after that, and here we've got a 2-week wait. Is there any way that we could perhaps maybe meet on the 10th and approve the contract on the 14th?
Mrs. Corcoran?
Is it all possible,
But
or
you're
what's
suggesting-
holding us up?
So the finalist interviews are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday is the 3rd, and then the district is closed for the following week.
Oh, okay, that's right, I
And
forgot,
then we
thank
come
you.
back on the 13th, you meet on the 14th, and I think that would be when
I
you'd be
think I
making
asked that
decisions.
question before, now that you answered it, sorry.
Oh, no worries, I just wanted to say that's why there appears to be a gap, because we're closed for a week.
How dare you close for a week?
And since so many of our staff didn't get a spring break, I really would like them to get this break.
But we've talked about that. We are available if the board would like to meet the 10th, 11th, or 12th, if the committee finishes their work on the 9th. That would be better if the board is available.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would be available.
Right, but
I'd be available too.
what date would be a good one? You want to say the Thursday is the
Please.
10th, board member?
Mr. Robinson?
Mr. Hardy, in the abundance of caution, can we schedule a meeting and then later cancel it if it's not necessary?
I think that you can, yes.
Thursday, the
It would be
11th?
a special meeting to be called, and you can do that, and it can be based on the fact that you have the report of the committee. If you don't have the report of the committee, then the meeting could be canceled.
So what day are we looking at, please?
June 11th, I think I've heard. Thursday, June 11th.
Hang on a minute. Jane?
My only request,
Mr. Robinson?
is that it's during the day, because I got a family thing at 4:30. So, but anytime during the day, I'm fine. Just I got to do a family thing.
Chair and I.
On the
have-
11th or with the 10th?
On the
or
11th, I can do any time during the day up until 4:30.
And the chair and I have Council of Governments at 11.
At 11. Right.
But maybe what about between council governments and
No.
Oh, in the morning,
Let's
or-
decide. I'm here to serve. You decide.
Or 9 to 11?
or I can do a night meeting. I can do a night meeting too. I just can't do like 4:30 to 6.
Oh, so what?
Okay. Okay, let's do the morning. Get it out over with then.
Okay, June 11th, what time it works for you? 9 a.m.? Excellent. Okay, that'll be a tentative meeting, and that's good. I appreciate the board and Mrs. Corcoran's recommendation on that, because I think that'll help us out. Mr. Reichert, we're fine with that from our perspective,
Yes.
I believe.
Perfect.
Got that thumbs up? Okay, excellent.
So we will just need to notice a special meeting for 9 a.m. on Thursday, the 11th, and that would be a meeting like this, with people able to comment electronically beforehand, and with the knowledge that if the committee does not conclude their work on the 9th, which we'll know at the end of the day on the 9th, then the meeting will be canceled, and we will certainly put out a notice to that effect, if that's the case. If not, the next meeting will be here at 9 o'clock on June 11th.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
Is that it? Thank you. And I'd like to thank you and your team, because you've done an awesome job.
Well, like you said, it's been a real team effort. Really.
It has been. I appreciate that, Bill. Because if one link was out of sync, it would not have worked. So everybody working together is what made this happen. So thank you.
Thank you all very much.
You know,
Mrs. Brown?
I'd also like to thank the community members on the search committee. I've heard that there was one gal who was, she bowed out because she was 90, but she was involved in hiring people for a large hotel firm. And she read all the interviews, and she had some comments that she gave to me, and I said, that's wonderful. And of course, I told her to watch the meetings and told her how she could send her comments to the meeting. But I understand there's a lot of people out there looking at the applications and looking them over, and I appreciate the input we're getting from the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent's report?
So continuing on, every meeting I try to share some of our good news and good work. And so Charlene Meyer, who's a program specialist for ESE, Pupil Support Services, sent this along regarding the team at Tatum. So one of Kim Hewitt's, which is an instructor at Tatum Ridge family, shared with another program specialist yesterday that her son has had so much success with distance learning that she's going to continue to stay home over the summer rather than returning to work so that her son can participate in ESY. She went on to say that Miss Hewitt, Miss Cardenas, Miss Piccini, and Mr. Jobson have gone above and beyond to make the distance learning program a huge success for her son. She also shared that administration had been extremely helpful as well. She shared specific examples of how the Tatum team has been working one-on-one with her son, and it has been an incredibly positive experience for the entire family. So thank you to the team at Tatum. And then I received another one from a parent addressed to Principal Ray Wilson at Laurel Nokomis. I'm writing this letter to express my appreciation of third grade teacher Kara Hart at Laurel Nokomis School. She's been doing an outstanding and superlative job transitioning the class to distance learning. Her attention to detail, patience, encouragement, and diligence are unmatched. We are very grateful to have such wonderful and caring teacher during these difficult times. I believe her class website she created with all of the links to various sites the students use as well as weekly assignment lists and project document access should be a model for all instructors in Sarasota County. Honestly, she could be a website designer. Her efforts in the area have made distance learning for the kids a much easier transition. It is evident she cares for the students deeply and goes above and beyond to make herself available to all of the children as need be with additional help and instruction. She also has made sure to help kids stay on task for the week, checking in with each student during Zoom meetings and helping with time management and goal setting. I hope Kara Hart is recognized for her outstanding ability and effort. She is a valuable asset to the education department at Laurel Nokomis School and the Sarasota County school system. So that's awesome. So I always like to start that way. And so I'll just kind of transition from that parental input to I provided all of you guys yesterday. Denise provided us with the results of the surveys that were sent out to staff, parents, and students on the fourth quarter. How has distance learning been for you? And we received, over 10, as you can see, over 10,000 responses with 5,000 parent responses. I thought that was amazing.
Very good.
And the representation of the grade levels, almost 79% of the staff respondents were classroom teachers. The students were grades 6 through 12. And the percent that were satisfied with remote learning was actually higher than I thought it might be. I was pleasantly surprised. The staff were very comfortable with a blended model, and students do still prefer, though, their traditional classroom. So they want to come back to school, which is good. They believe that the communication on the assignments, the parents believe it was clear substantially. I mean, very high percentage. And I think that's great because, it becomes really difficult if you're not sure what you're supposed to be doing. The amount of work if the amount of work was appropriate, actually the parents said more yes than the students. So that was interesting. I'm not sure which way the students were leaning, like too much or too little. And, too much. And the majority of students worked between 2 to 4 hours each day in their distance learning, with a much smaller percentage working over 4 hours a day in their subjects. And the majority of people were very comfortable returning to a traditional classroom in the fall, which, again, I found a bit interesting, makes me happy. With the number not being comfortable as far as students was very, very low. The students are ready to come back to school. This survey, the people who responded, it would appear they're ready to come back.
They miss their friends.
And the parent percentage is not as high as I thought it might have been. So it was very good information. I wanted to share it with you. And I've given a copy to Kathy so she can incorporate it into the minutes.
Thank you, Mrs. Cochran. Hold on a minute. Mrs. Brown?
There were two empty, there wasn't anything under the parents' preferences or the students' percent receiving clear communication. Were they not asked the questions, or did they fall off the
I would
chart?
imagine that those survey questions were different. I just
Okay.
have the summary. We have the detail by each individual grouping, and I can have Denise share that with you
Thank
if you
you.
want. And then moving on to last Friday, I provided everyone with a copy of our return to worksite plan and James Slayton's return to action plan as far as student athletes. Mr. Hardy developed a release form for families to sign, acknowledging, COVID-19 is out there and what the expectations will be for students in that area. So these guidelines or participation guidelines were developed in conjunction with surrounding school districts and athletic directors. So I feel pretty comfortable with those. As far as the start, I was on a statewide call with superintendents yesterday, and there are a number of them that have started conditioning outside, some in their weight rooms for their student athletes as of today.
Mrs. Goodwin?
Well, I just want to say, because I usually hear from coaches, that I heard a lot from coaches at various different schools, and they were happy with the process and what we had outlined. So I didn't have anybody who complained, which doesn't always happen.
I know. I think just transitioning gradually, I think it makes it a little easier for everyone.
I think they get it.
Same with our staff. We're returning them back to their work sites, but again, we're trying to start that process gradually, reassuring them that their environments are safe, they're being cleaned, we will provide them what they need in order to feel safe. So we're beginning that process again June 15th, transitioning so that when we return, basically when we return July 13th, it's business as usual. Everyone is back to work at their work sites. Our sites are available for external rentals. Our student athletes will be practicing inside the weight rooms. July 27th, I think, is when the FHSAA start of the fall sports begins.
Mr. Robinson?
Thank you for working on the thing about the athletes and the bringing the staff back. But the question everybody keeps asking me, and I'm sure everybody else, is August. And I know you guys are working on a variety of contingency plans. I just want to make sure you're moving forward with that. I know it's a mammoth task. There's going to be probably a couple different ifs, ands, or buts there. But do you have any idea when you're going to have some sort of skeleton structure to present?
So our team has been working with the health department on a number of different plans for reopening our schools in August. And as I mentioned, I was also on the phone with the superintendents. As you can imagine, the state of Florida is very different. What happens in Dade County is not what happens in Glades County. So everyone has every kind of plan known to man or is working on every kind of plan. Right now, I would think the biggest single issue would be the accommodating of the 6-foot social distancing and what do we do as far as transportation. So, for example, I had a conversation with Jody, and I've asked both Laura and Jody to join us because we've been working really integrally on this. And so he was just saying he had a conversation with Jason Harris, the director of transportation, today. And so traditionally, our buses hold 5 students in a row. They're 13 rows deep. So if we go to 1 in every other seat, it means we can hold 13 students on a bus. Right now, they hold 65. I know that there have been a few districts who have said they're going to require the students to wear a mask, but they're going to put 1 student in every seat. Some school districts have talked about taking temperatures. I'm sorry? Oh, yes, wrap them in saran wrap. That's correct. Taking temperatures. Again, do we want to stop a school bus on Clark Road for 10 minutes while they're taking temperatures? It becomes very dangerous. So, again, that becomes where there's more questions than answers that we come up with. However, we have kind of anticipated all of the different scenarios. And interestingly enough, Craig, our brand new director of communications, came up with this great idea that why don't we put these on our website, just like our superintendent search? People are curious. So instead of waiting for everybody to ask us a question, let's put it on our website with a big disclaimer that this is valid today. Read it today, it could be different tomorrow, but so that is our plan. As soon as we have something a little more concrete, we're going to put it on the website. We're going to let everyone know. It'll be one of the banners that goes across like the superintendent search or the ICANN plan was that we had, so that everyone's aware of what we're doing and how we're doing it. With hopefully a plan, a much stronger plan in place by July. We're still a good, 75 days out from when school starts. So it's a little difficult to plan. We have received some updated information from the health department that puts their recommendations or guidance similar to the phasing. Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, they call it Step 1, Step 2, Step 3. So again, based upon where we're at in terms of phasing, we can apply those guidelines into the plan for that particular point in time. So, as we continue our work, we're going to be bringing in various stakeholders or experts in their content area. So we'd ask teachers, master schedulers, because this could become a scheduling nightmare for our schools. Head custodians and custodial supervisors as far as what it takes to clean, route supervisors and bus drivers, what does it take to transport these kids? So once we start getting a little bit more refined in that planning process, we'll start bringing those kind of content experts in to help us along. But I have asked these guys here, because they're also experts, to help us. And so I'm going to kind of turn it over to Laura. Her and her team have been working really diligently on the planning part of it.
Okay, and thanks, Mitzi. That was a great introduction. I just wanted to grab the research that our team has been doing on this. These are all sorts of links and plans that we've been looking at, and we feel really good that we have some solid guidance, and it's time to get some feedback from our teachers and our administrators. Although we have been working with our academic collaboration team, which is all of our directors. And I just lost you. Mitzi, can you hear me? Okay, that includes all of our directors and some of our supervisors, and also we got direction, and they kind of are playing around with it, and that is our steering committee, which also includes our ACT, but then has 4 principals and 3 teachers representing all different levels. So, we've tried to pull the very best. Department, but even things.
You're good.
Am I still there?
Yes.
Okay. Even things like the Aspen Institute and mental health organizations. One of our groups from the ACT team created a dissertation-worthy document on what school might look like. It's fabulous, but we incorporated their thoughts into, our very big draft. I will tell you one other thing, and then Jody has a lot to say, I know, about operations. I just want you to know that we have already focused on the professional development and creating plans over the summer. Our teachers responded really well to remote learning, and not that we want to go back there full time, but are there ways that we can incorporate blended learning into our courses? That's one thing we learned and we're working on. And another thing we learned is it's really all about personalizing the instruction for every child. That was not an aha, but it was this is how we need to move forward. So we are using the term, we want to accelerate the learning, and that is fill in the remediation for every child that they may need, but also extend learning for children who are already there. It's all about accelerating the learning for every child. And we also want to come in strong with our social emotional support in August, and no matter how we're going back, and the mental health support. And the very last thing I'll say, I'm sorry, Jody, the very last thing I'll say is I hope you've been able to take a look at the mental health webpage. They have put so many resources on there that we need to make sure our families have access to. So that's all. Jody, you're on.
Thank you, Laura.
So thank you, Laura. And let me just say, Dr. Kingsley, excuse me, that I have to commend her and her team. So they have really brought tons of resources to the table so that we're looking at, thinking from across the United States and the world in terms of what's the best practices and how you bring students back to school. So on the operations side, obviously, we're all about support and supporting those decisions and how we move back. And so our conversations along with the task force have already also been at the director level. So all our directors are looking at, for example, in facilities, how are we cleaning? We're going to need to change that strategy a little bit. Transportation, depending on if we're socially distancing on buses or not, there is a huge impact. So across all of our departments, food service, we're really trying to brainstorm what those options might look like. So as we move forward, our plan now is to start bringing in bus drivers. We're going to bring in route supervisors. And so these teams will start to expand as we narrow in our focus and move towards start of school. So I think right now we're really trying to openly communicate with everybody, make sure all the options are on the table, and trying to really narrow in the couple of options that are out there. We see them as really two options, really opening school with some kind of enhanced precautionary safety measures, or opening school with social distancing. And so those are really the two directions that we're moving in on the operations side.
So I heard two things, Jody. Social distancing, and what else did you say? And which way are you leaning?
So we're really running in two directions. So really one plan to open school with enhanced safety precautions. So that would just open school with normal class sizes, the same amount of kids on buses that we normally would put on. But once we get in those situations, enhanced safety precautions. So more hand washing, wearing of masks, things of that nature. So that's really one plan. The other plan that's really more challenging is being able to socially distance in classrooms and being able to socially distance on buses. So that's the really challenging plan. And what we're doing right now in the background is we have people in construction services who are actually looking at every space in the district, every school, every classroom, every space, and saying, if we have to socially distance in this room, how many students, how many people can we put in that room at one time? We're building those counts by school. So we know that if we have to socially distance in each classroom at 6 foot between each desk, between each student, what will that look like in terms of how many kids we can fit in a building? So those are the types of things that are going on behind the scenes as we continue to plan for a couple of different options and possible opening scenarios.
That's what I heard about moving desks out of the classrooms. Okay, that explains that conversation. Mrs. Brown.
I appreciate you working, and I know there's so many moving parts to it. But I think regardless of how good a plan you have, I mean, we always look, do we have enough teachers to fill the positions? Now, I mean, how are we just with our normal teachers and that? But then also, I mean, do we have teachers that aren't coming back because of this? But more importantly, I mean, not even teachers, but even our janitors and our bus drivers and our lunch people. I mean, we want these people to stay home if they're sick. We're going to need a ton of substitutes in each area. Are we doing anything to kind of build up that or look at that or something? Because, I mean, I would think any plan that you've got is going to be having to rely on substitutes, classrooms and others to fill in.
Absolutely. It's part of our conversation every time we meet in terms of what our staffing looks like as we move forward. So a couple of different things. Right now, Ms. Corcoran referred to our employee return to work site plan. And as part of that plan going out in the next few days, our communications team under Craig's leadership is actually putting out some information for employees. So just informing them on what the return to work site schedule looks like, but they're also putting together a lot of resources on our website in terms of what is the work site going to look like when you get back? What are the precautionary measures we've taken so that they can go there and see that when they do come back to work, we will have we'll have bottles of cleaning solutions so they can clean throughout the day. If there's some things we need to do in the actual office area to be able to distance them a little bit better, we'll be able to make those moves. So we want to make sure that employees feel, as they're thinking about coming back and being asked to come back, they're comfortable that we're doing all the right things in the workplace. And again, Susie DeVos has been a big piece of that, and worked with the health department, Michael Drennan, Chuck Henry. So all of that's being incorporated now as we move forward in terms of back to work site planning. So we're trying to do a lot of that to make sure employees are comfortable. The other thing you're going to hear more about here in the future is we're also going to open up the opportunity to extend the opportunity for personal leave. What we talked about recently is we don't want to get in a situation where we're right up against the start of school and we have people calling in and saying, I don't want to come back to work. We'd rather be able to plan for that. So we are working right now with the SCTA. We're going to try and open up an additional window for personal leave here the first few weeks in June to give people the opportunity to say, hey, I'd feel more comfortable taking a year off. That does a couple of things. One, it gives our employees comfort that they have that additional option. And then two, it gives us enough time to hopefully plan for any of those that we're going to know about right away. So, we're concerned about those things. We're talking about them and trying to do everything we possibly can to make sure employees feel comfortable. And we have enough time to plan for those employees who aren't going to return to their normal work site and job.
Thank you, Jody.
Mr. Robinson?
I don't know if it's on.
I had a brief question.
Go ahead. I yield my time to Ms. Brown.
And that is, I mean, we talked about it at the last meeting, and that is, are we going to be opening up our fields for summer camp groups? Or we got an email today, somebody wants the tennis courts open so adults can go and play tennis this summer. Are we having any movement on that yet?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So on Monday, June 15th, when students we're opening campuses to students who can go outside on our campuses and our fields and our tracks, and they can do outside conditioning. At the same time, we are going to open up all of those sites where we have community access. So I've been asked a couple times about the tennis courts at Venice High School. So on the 15th, those previously open areas will reopen. And then full open and access to campus for rentals and camps and things like that will happen on the 29th, when we actually allow students back into the facilities to use gyms, locker rooms, weight rooms. At that same time, July 13th, at that same time, we'll open up Facilitron and open up to outside rentals. So again, let me clarify, I misspoke a little bit. June 29th, students come inside, and we're allowing them to locker rooms, gyms, etc. Monday, July 13th, when we get back from break, Facilitron will be open, rentals will be available, and so we'll kind of be open for business July 13th in terms of that rental, summer camps, day camps, all of those things.
Summer camps and day camps and tennis courts, you said July 13th?
June 15th.
So
June
15th.
June 15th.
So
Thank you.
Any outside fields or properties, right now I know of like Brookside's track is used a lot by the community, the tennis courts, things that they can access within the boundaries of that aren't gated in or fenced in, will reopen June 15th. And so will our athletes will be able to come in and do the first week. It's an hour of conditioning, and then on the 22nd it's a little bit longer, and then beginning the 29th they'll actually start going back into our gyms and working inside, and then as of the 13th everything is open.
Oh, that'll be a relief to a lot. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So June, Mr. Robinson?
Yeah, I kind of have two issues. Thank you, Jody. And I'm hoping that you're right, that it's a modified safety precautions instead of social distancing, because the logistics of social distancing is just unbearable. But Dr. Kingsley, I wanted to ask you a few questions. We've been talking about different scenarios and having different contingency plans. I'm wondering, are you guys also developing a contingency plan if we have an isolated flare-up in one particular school? Because right now we had to close all the schools, but if we have to do it on a school-by-school basis, I see Mitzi nodding her head, Dr. Kingsley. You're frozen. Are you frozen?
I am frozen, but
Okay.
You can probably hear me. I can't see a thing, but I keep getting Steve's telling me that I'm frozen.
Okay.
And I will tell you, yes, we have both. If we had a resurgence in the community, we have that plan that we're kind of ironing out details. And we also have, if someone becomes ill, what happens? And that, of course, we will be guided by the health department and our county epidemiologist. They will help us through that, as they have been doing all along.
And my second question is it possible to make the Sarasota Virtual School Academy one more parallel to the traditional schools, so that if there was a closure, it'd be more like getting on an on-ramp of an interstate rather than Missy's raising her hand.
Okay, good.
Is that possible
And
to make
wait,
it
I have one
more
question.
smooth of a transition if it was parallel in nature, or is that not possible?
Mrs. Corcoran.
And Mitzi's going to answer, but I just have one question about, since I can't see any of you. Please tell me I'm not frozen with my eyes closed.
Okay, we won't answer you.
We won't answer you.
No, it's a good. I was just thinking, your frozen is a very complimentary frozen.
Yes, you are. You're very complimentary.
You look very nice. Okay, so now I've lost my train.
My question was about having a more parallel nature of the Sarasota Virtual Academy, so that it'd be more like going on an on-ramp of an interstate if somebody has to transition on or off the virtual schools.
Yeah, and I think what
Does that you understand my
I know
question?
exactly what you're saying, and I think that I would prefer that they not transition on and off to virtual school, because virtual school is very different.
Well, I understand that, but if a whole school goes down.
No, but I'm saying I would prefer that they transition to distance learning. So they still stay within their own school, they stay with their own teacher, but they are now doing distance learning rather than virtual. First of all, there's the unfortunate reality is everything is based upon funding. And if you're a virtual student, your funding is only received when you successfully complete the program. So I won't receive any money for that teacher until that student successfully completes at the end of the program. So I would prefer if a student, for example, Bridget's daughter has now come in contact. So she has to stay home. I don't want her learning to stop. So I want her to transition from a classroom environment into a distance learning environment so that she can continue keeping up with her class while she has to stay home in quarantine. I'd like it so that if a school campus overall has to shut down that one school, that they can transition into their distance learning plan rather than having to try to figure out what I'm going to do with all of those students. So I think the plan is that if there are parents out there who are adamant that their children are not going to come back to school, they can look at a virtual program. Virtual is very different from distance learning. So it is much more self-driven. So again, there's also going to be the opportunity, if we have to stay with the social distancing, we are not going to be able to have all of our children in our schools at one time. So it is going to have to be one day you're in school and the next day you may be distance learning. It could be, there are some districts who have been talking about an A week and a B week, where you come to school 1 week, you don't come to school 1 week. So there's a lot of different plans. I will tell you from my perspective, which both Jody and Laura will attest to, my biggest concern is making sure that we have found an accommodation for every one of our elementary students. Because it will be very difficult if we're saying elementary kids can come to school 2 days 1 week, 3 days 1 week, or just 2 days, and then telling their parents, oh yeah, so your boss will be okay with that, because they probably won't be. Middle and high school maybe has a little bit more flexibility with being able to do an A or a B week, but I really wanted to make sure that we're doing everything we can to accommodate elementary students so that they are able to come to our schools and be in a school environment. So if we limit transitioning between classes, so special teachers are coming into the students' classrooms, I now have the classrooms from the special teachers where I can seat students to do distance learning. I have media centers where I can seat students to do distance learning. I have cafeterias. So again, it kind of comes down to Jody's team and how many students they can get in that school safely 6 feet apart to determine if we're able to accommodate every elementary student in a classroom, or do we need to look at other space, or...
I understand. So are you envisioning a situation where it's quite possible, say we have a first grade teacher named Miss Tompkins, and Miss Tompkins could be doing a traditional class for 10 kids and then distance learning for 5 kids?
No, so say there's 15 kids in the classroom, Ms. Tompkins could be doing one-on-one teaching in the classroom for however many students she can fit in there. So say it's 8, she's got a class of 15. And the other 7 might be in the media center with a monitorial.
No, I was just an example. I hate to use Bridget's,
No, but
if they had COVID or something and they had to do distance learning because of that, so they're not in the media room, they're not in the media center.
Correct, they would
they're
be home, but that teacher would normally be teaching that student.
Right.
So they may be investing more time. We may have to figure out how we accommodate for that.
So
but that student would still stay with that teacher.
So in that scenario, if we had 5 kids who were in COVID, so Ms. Tompkins would do, whoever Ms. Tompkins is, nobody knows who that person is.
She would provide the
To-
assignments to
for-
the
for-
students for distance learning.
So she would teach 10 in her classroom, and the other 5 that are home because of COVID, they would do distance learning. That's okay. That's what I want to know. Thank you.
I mean, that's how I think we've been hoping to, implement that. It's not, I really don't want students going in and out of virtual school.
You're next. Should I let Bridget go ahead of you?
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay, I was trying to get Mrs. Goodwin.
And I will just say this about Florida Virtual, Mr. Robinson. Florida Virtual is advertises themselves as the 68th county. So, if you will, in a way, they are a competitor of ours because they take our money away when students go there full time. And of course, they're trying to build their reputation up because they've had some issues with their board and so forth in the last couple of years. But distance learning is certainly something that I'm much more in favor of than recommending, other than the one course that students must take on virtual, having students to take. What I'm concerned with is where we stand on teachers. This is the time of year that we're hiring teachers. We have a HR director who's moving into another area. We're hiring an HR director. Are we confident that we have all the skill set and can find the person for that particular job? Could we possibly, get a little update on that, and an update as well at our next maybe workshop on where we stand with hiring teachers and how many substitutes and so forth we have in those?
Sure, we can.
The other staff as well, classifieds as well.
Classified staffing, I believe, is actually tomorrow. So we'll see where we're at with that. We have had a virtual job fair, and there have been an amazing number of people who have registered and signed up for that. Our recruiters are working really diligently to match people with their jobs. So I think we can provide you with a great update on that. I think that even though, it's normally, and there's still, you can still send the resume to the principal for any job that they want. I mean, that's still not changed. But I think the virtual job fairs have actually yielded us, it's strange, this whole virtual world we're in. I think things you just never thought would be great the number of people who have signed up and participated in that process is more than we actually believed. Danielle Schweid thought it was a huge success. So yeah, we can talk about that at the next workshop if you want, no problem. And but I think we're well suited. We've got, we have vacancies and we're going to have to fill them, and we're always going to have trouble with certain vacancies. High school chemistry teacher and ESE teacher. I mean, there are certain teaching positions that are always difficult to fill, but we're out there looking and wanting to make sure we get the best.
HR director.
The executive director of HR, Jody, and I are scheduled at 8:30 tomorrow morning to review the applicants. We actually had 27. We actually had more than that, but they didn't finish getting through the process, I guess, before the job closed. But we have 27 of them. I will tell you a large number of them aren't necessarily what we're looking for in terms of experience and knowledge base. But I think there's a handful, and so we're going to begin that interview process. And so I'm hopeful we'll get somebody really good.
So Mitzi, this is Jody. I just want to, so I misspoke. So classified mock staffing was today. I apologize. Actual staffing of classified is Monday the 4th.
Okay.
And I will say that our recruitment team, just to kind of capitalize on everything that Mitzi just said, our recruitment team is working full time. I know the virtual fair was very successful, and now one of the things under the direction of Danielle Schweid, our recruiters are now actually reaching out to principals who have vacancies and saying, how can we help you? Here's who we have through the virtual fair. How can we make matches for you? How can we assist with this? So a lot of hands-on, a lot of communication. And so we're really putting that recruitment team to work this year. So we'll see how they do, but I feel good about it.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Okay, let me see if I can remember everything, because I know a lot just transpired. But first, I want to say thank you to Mrs. Corcoran and Dr. Kingsley and Mr. Dumas. I always call you Jody. But really, I think that so much was touched upon, and I do believe while this is a crazy time, there's a really profound opportunity, and I loved hearing the accelerating the learning and really customizing it. And there's, I think a couple of scenarios were just touched upon on, things that we didn't think would work out well are actually proving to be better. I mean, just when you're talking about recruiting, or we were talking about the superintendent search, I can tell you from a parental standpoint, I am ready for my child to go back to school, but I think this is a perfect example of, but we don't know, right? So being able to adapt and pivot with the least amount of disruption, for at least speaking as a mother with my mom hat on, that to me is something is really important. And the more we're able to talk about it, I think that gives families some vision into what may come, although we don't know for sure. But that to minimize the disruption for the students and how we can instructionally support them. And again, Dr. Kingsley, you're frozen, but it's a good frame. But I think that's really important, and I thank you for also touching upon professional development, because that was something that I had written down, thinking it was critical time right now that we oftentimes do anyways, but with a very different landscape that we're approaching. So I'm very encouraged to hear that. I also, let me see, I'm trying to get my notes here, but I think something that I've heard, and I think perhaps what Mr. Robinson was referring to, and it is interesting, people talk about homeschooling and virtual learning and distance learning. All very, very different things, but somehow have been melded into it. My question perhaps is, and I think Betsy touched upon it, and I would tend to agree with what you said, is in the event there is more disruption than what we are potentially predicting. So, and a family has chosen to re-enroll for X school, and then the volatility, for lack of a better term, is just not something that they think is working, and would like to seek out virtual, Sarasota virtual or Florida virtual. There are very specific registration times. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, and I think that making, whether that's changed or not, I mean, I understand the funding component as well. It's just informing people that is the differences, and that in the event you chose to go that way, these are the timelines that you would be able to do that. And I don't have those dates off the top of my head, but that it isn't as fluid, and so that should come into the conversation as far as they're making the decisions for what what they believe is in the best interest of their child, with certain unknowns, or their family, I mean, depending on their health circumstances as well. The other part is I know, Dr. Kingsley, you talked about you guys are preparing for any potential regression.
Yes.
Okay. And so, I mean, I won't belabor that. That's just, I know that's something that's certainly been on the top of mind of many. I know there's a discussion sometimes about holding a student back. I know I've personally had conversations about that with family members, and that there's a lot that goes into that. Can you speak to, is that something you guys are already hearing, or can you kind of speak to what that process is? And I know it is not a one-size-fits-all, by the way.
So if I could just clarify, Bridget, you're talking about if we had a potential resurgence of the virus, and the decision is made by county health department and others with Mitzi and the rest of us to close a school or the county, then do we have a plan in place for that?
No, I'm sorry. Let me. What my question was that I've heard is, as we go into fall, some families are concerned that their children have regressed significantly, and that they will not be as successful in their rising X grade year. And there's a question of, if I wanted to hold my child back, what can I do that? And in general, my conversation, there's a lot of discussion within that, and so that's what I didn't know if you could speak to that, what that process looks like.
Okay, and so those discussions have happened at the school sites, working with school staff and administrators, and to my knowledge, they've been all resolved successfully. There were a few that came to my attention, but they were resolved. I think parents need to understand that we're all kind of in the same place. And so teachers are well aware that when we start school, we want to get as many, without overdoing or stressing kids, we want to get the diagnostic testing going so that we can understand where kids are. And we fully expect that teachers will want to collaborate with their peers and do some resorting during intervention time, whether that's to accelerate the child who zoomed through things, pardon the pun, I'm not zooming right now, or those kids who really need to have some gaps filled in. So that is our initial plan at the beginning of the year. So all the parents need to understand that all kids are kind of in the same boat, and the teachers are well aware of that. And we are planning for, identifying where the needs are that we can accelerate each and every child.
I appreciate it, and you answered that perfectly. And I don't think it's a ton, but I know it's on the mind of many, and so that we're prepared for that and how to respond accordingly, and that there really isn't necessarily across the one specified disadvantage. We're all in a unique situation. So thank you again to your team. I wanted to quickly, and I'll zip it after that, I'll try at least, is Jody, thank you. You guys touched, I think the capacity issue is a challenge. And so I know that you guys are evaluating that moving forward. And as we move forward, and I know, again, HR was something we talked about too. So I guess there's really nothing, I know not in concrete, but I appreciate the public discussion of it. I love that it's being, as you move forward, it'll be posted online so it can inform families and prepare us as much as we can with a completely unknown circumstance. So again, I want to say thank you, because I think this is really, I think it's illustrated our ability to adapt, and I'm excited about the innovation to come, and I really think it's gonna make public education better than ever. So that's all.
Thank you.
Mrs. Brown, I'd like to thank you for yielding your time to Mrs. Ziegler. I really appreciate that.
Well, I know she'd been waiting.
Now, too.
And I know we've answered this question before. We're still getting emails about it and wanting explanations for it. And I've talked with Steve Canties, and I've also talked with several of our principals and had this answers, but I think perhaps for the public. We're working the graduation so that at least the students can be there in person. We're not sure yet about the audience, but I'm still getting complaints that we're having the proms in the gym. And I know that I've talked to some of the principals, and they're saying, especially in this time when so many people are out of work and all of that, the students just can't, some families can't afford all the big rigmarole. We're trying to make it as open and to as many students as possible. Perhaps Laura or Mitzi could respond to that, or somehow, add to that. It's just so frustrating when they continue to come back to us, but we've got to look at all of the students.
And to be perfectly honest with you, they're not supposed to be proms. There is no prom this year, unfortunately. So
it's a dance.
It's a dance for the seniors to celebrate. So this isn't for them to bring a date if they're dating a sophomore. This is for the seniors who are attending that school and graduating. That was the original plan, or that is what the plan is that we'd like to have in place. Oh, Steve is there. Well, he can jump in there.
Oh, he must have heard his name.
That was perfect, actually.
So my ears were burning.
I was going to say.
So along that line, Shirley, thanks for bringing that up. If you go back to when we started this whole process with the COVID-19 and started working through each step of the process, one of the things that came to light early on was the seniors. And if you remember the conversation we had around everything from how are we going to recognize these students? How are we going to take these seniors who have just had this incredibly difficult into the school year? How are we going to make sure we can make it special for them? So I'll just walk you through. I don't want to get too long-winded, but real quick, I'll say that if you look at how the schools have creatively found ways to recognize each of these seniors. We had some amazing celebrations at all of our schools for our seniors, and they really became very, very special. You know, everything from the signs that was Mitzi's idea to purchase signs for all of our seniors, and the schools delivered those to, in many cases, delivered them to the students' homes. I remember Oak Park last week delivered the signs to their seniors, and they delivered a meal to each family, and it was just a way to reconnect. So, you know, despite the fact that we've had these challenges, there's been these amazing connections that have been made with our students, and they haven't been forgotten about the challenges that these seniors have faced. So if you go into graduation and you think about how we address graduation, originally we had talked about, you know, how are we going to address graduation? This is a huge milestone for families, and we ended up settling on, we started out talking about a digital graduation, and then the feedback came back from students and families and parents that they do want a face-to-face graduation. We pushed it out to July, so we would be able to have that face-to-face graduation that these families so desperately wanted. That's what our principals wanted too for the students. So we set that up, and now it's starting to look like, if you think about the events that are going to occur at the Atlanta Braves Stadium, the 2 graduations there, and at the football fields and at Robarts Arena, we're going to have some pretty special graduations this year. They're going to look a little different, and it's hard telling, you know, at the end, you know, once we get there, what they're going to look like, but it's going to be very special. We're also, as a matter of fact, 2 schools are taping their digital graduations today. We hired a company. Again, the district is picking up the cost of that. We're having digital graduations that'll be posted on every website as soon as graduation is over, and those students will have that keepsake, you know, forever. So when you get to the dance, the conversation began from the beginning. It was, okay, what can we do to make this special for the seniors? Let's do something for the seniors. Prom had already been canceled. And as you all are well aware, proms now can cost a student upwards of anywhere from $500 to $1,000. And that's not an exaggeration when you take the whole, everything from the clothes and the food and the transportation and all that. So at the end of the day, the conversation with the principals was, is there something else we can do for the students? There was never any conversation about a graduation. It was, I mean, a prom. It was always about a senior dance, a chance to bring the seniors back on campus one last time for them to be celebrated and to celebrate with each other, you know, this very special, incredible, ridiculously challenging year that we've all faced, but especially those seniors who have missed these milestones. So I think the answer is we would love to go back and have a prom. Typically, a prom is you'll have about 40 to 50% of the students in a class that will attend a prom. They're off campus. Heck, in some cases, they're 10, 15 miles from the school. This is about bringing those seniors back on campus one last time, celebrate and recognize them. So, yeah, I think we landed in the right place. Unfortunately, we would love to have the proms, but it wasn't meant to be this year, and it's certainly not something that we're excited about. It's sad that the seniors have to deal with that, but I think all things considered, I just want to applaud the families and the students, the schools, the school board, the superintendent. We really have worked hard to do our best to connect with these seniors, something to make it special for them here at the end of the year. And I'm really proud of how everybody came together to do that.
Thank you, Steve.
I can attest to Booker High School. Dr. Shelley was absolutely out of her mind with happiness, running up and down the car line, celebrating each and every student. She stopped at every car and talked to every student. And the whole staff was out in the parking lots, in their cars, in the tail end of their cars, their trailer, and they were just celebrating. Those kids were so happy. Some of them said it was better than actual graduation because they were singled out alone, and I mean, it was just wonderful.
Thank you guys all. Appreciate you showing up here and helping me out. So I just have one last thing on the superintendent's report. Sorry, it's quite lengthy. So this one is a bit more serious, but I just have a little statement I'd like to make. I want to share how proud we are of our students, many of whom demonstrated peacefully alongside our city's mayor and so many others who are deeply concerned by the death of George Floyd and the events that are taking place in our country. As a district, our school leaders have been focused on interrupting racism and building culturally responsive schools, and we have a plan to continue to deepen our learning when our students return next school year.
Thank you.
Who is that from?
Me.
You. Oh, thank you.
Mrs.
Thank you much. I missed the beginning of it. Thank you.
So, and actually, Dr. Kingsley. So that concludes
Beautiful.
the superintendent's report.
Well done. Thank you. Next is our hearing of the citizens, and we have received letters and information in, and they will be put into the minutes of this meeting and can be viewed online. Are there any changes or additions to the consent agenda, Mrs. Superintendent? I'm never ahead of you.
So, yes, item number 8, the instructional classified personnel report had an addendum added.
Thank you. May I have a motion, please, for approval of consent agenda?
Move the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Robinson?
Thank you. I just wanted to briefly talk about item number 12. I'm glad that we're doing this to fix the little quirk for the food service managers, but I hope that there are other quirks, specifically with the main dish cooks, that you're going to be able to work with the STA to fix some of the quirks associated with that. Because right now we have people who are supervising people who only get paid 24 cents an hour more. So you have people who are going to be supervisors who essentially only get like $200 a year for doing that. And so it kind of is a disincentive to get people to step up. These people already don't make that much money. And so I'm hoping that the administration will work hard with the SCTA to fix this little quirk in the salary schedule.
So that'll be one of the items we discussed during negotiations this year. But as just an aside, there is a plan to have an entire discussion on food and nutrition services at the
I can't
workshop.
hear you.
There's also, just as an aside, irrespective of the one salary item, which we can work through with SCTA, Sarah Dan and Jody plan to come and speak with you at the next workshop regarding all of the food and nutrition services program. So,
Fantastic. Thank you.
What are we doing with the teacher starting salary in regards, or we're waiting for the budget to be passed?
correct. So we're waiting
So
for the
whether
budget to be
it's
passed.
as is until the budget, pass the law, if in fact that happens. Okay.
I mean, at that this particular
Another
point
thing
in time.
that's up in the air.
Correct. But we will have to have conversations with the SCTA on that.
Could you put up the voting for us? It's up there, but it's not on our screens. You got that fixed, but not this one.
It's not going to show up on that screen, unfortunately, not unless you change this. Hold on. You have to switch from broadcast and computer. It'll actually show up.
So who's voting? I'm not voting. Is that just Bridget able
It's
to?
just for the consent agenda. Why is the...
It's not coming up.
I'm not.
Let's take
I don't have a vote up.
Aye.
We're just gonna vote.
Wait till I call for the vote, Mr. Robinson. All those in favor, please say
What have you
aye.
done by now?
Aye.
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 And the chair votes aye, and the motion passes 5-0 for the consent agenda. Under new business, may I have a motion for item 39, please?
Item 39, we move that we approve the 1920 student progression plan as presented. Is that
Second.
1920?
2019-2020.
That's an amendment to the 2019-2020 progression plan that had previously been advertised and is now back in front of you for final decision.
It doesn't say amended. Okay, thank you. Mrs. Ziegler? Sorry, you're in the corner now.
Hard. Well, for purposes of some historical aspects, I just want to confirm, and I know Mr. Hardy, we spoke about this, so just for the, and I apologize if you guys can hear my little ones back there. What happened was there was a discussion about amending the requirements for Pineview. I'm going to summarize here. At one point, it required 8 rigorous coursework, as well as a minimum of 17 credits to be taken on the campus. And I know that 8 rigorous coursework has been removed. I believe that the amended, corrected, the removal of the 8 rigorous coursework was approved for advertising on February 4th. Is that correct?
That's correct. There was an original motion that was approved for advertising at the end of January. There was an issue that was spotted with that, and that came back to the board. I believe it was the first meeting in February. I believe it was the 4th, February 4th, and there was another motion that was approved to advertise amended changes, which are the changes Ms. Ziegler was just referencing. So that's been now advertised and has been awaiting further approval. Typically, it comes back about a little after 30 days later, but given the changes to the schedule, that has not been brought back until this board meeting.
Yeah,
right. No, and I understand that, and that's why I wanted to bring it back up and refresh because of the changes, and then what transpired from then until now, just to make sure, and ensure that what was advertised. Do we know what the date of the advertisement was? And has there been any change? Because there has been some concern raised, and it's hard to tell based on what's in here. What's adopted here and attached is the same as what was approved for advertising on February 4th. But the language for the advertisement doesn't necessarily, there's some concerns that may not match. So I just want to make sure the advertisement that went out on X date mirrors what was approved for advertising on 2/4 and is exactly what would be adopted today.
Mrs. Corcoran.
Okay, so what was advertised 2/4, we realized there was an issue. I think it was mostly a scrivener's error. I'm not really sure exactly what it was. And so it was brought back before the board at the second meeting on 2/18, and then it was approved to advertise the amended items. It was scheduled to be on the March 24th school board meeting agenda, but since we didn't have that meeting, we held it because then we thought the process was to only put items before the board that were emergency in nature. But now we've figured out a whole new routine, and so the items were brought forward from the agenda in their totality from March 24th to today. So I just confirmed with Ms. Tompkins that she's the one who posted the item onto the agenda document from what was posted in the March 24th document, which would have been from what was advertised on February 18th.
Okay, so there was no changes. Again, and I'm trying to pull everything here together, and I just wanted to confirm that just because of the time that's transpired.
Right.
And I won't, but for accuracy, I want to make sure that we don't, I'll get to where I stand, but I also want to kind of eliminate the continuation of corrections and make sure that precisely what the majority of the board supported on 2/4 is what was advertised and is what is being brought forward for ratification, for lack of a better term. But with that, I go back to, I think everyone knows where I stand on this. I think even with the amended version of removing the 8 rigorous coursework, I think there are limitations, and I recognize that, and at the end of the day, I believe that they may not be necessary to allow the students at Pineview or any school really, to be successful and thrive. So I won't be supporting this. I know I spoke with Mrs. Corcoran about that, but I just want to confirm for clarification, there is no difference as to what was advertised and then what is being put before the board for final adoption.
I believe that's what Mrs. Corcoran has said.
And I'm looking at the attachment, and that's what I see. The 8 rigorous courses is not there. 26 credits is there with 17 on campus.
Any further discussion? Yeah, Jane second.
I'm trying to get back. I know Mrs. Corcoran is looking. My recollection from looking at this a few days ago was that the initial approval to advertise was the January 21st agenda. It was after that board meeting that it was discovered there was a glitch between courses and credits and et cetera, a Scrivener's error, and that it came back before the board on the February, I believe it was 4th, the first meeting in February, the February 4th agenda, where it was again approved for advertising, this time the corrected version.
Yeah.
So what is being approved tonight needs to be the same document that was approved on February 4th for advertising.
Correct. It was January 21st was the original approval to advertise. February 4th was a request to approve revising one section of the student progression plan to make the correction that Mr. Hardy just spoke of, and it is my understanding that that is the document that is attached. Okay.
Mr. Robinson?
But I don't think that was Ms. Ziegler's question. I think Ms. Ziegler's question was the one that was approved on February 4th. Is that also the same one that was advertised on February 18th?
There is no February 18th.
So
it was January 21st and February 4th.
So the one that was approved on February 4th, was that advertised, that new one?
That's what was, yes, it was approved for the advertising purposes on
I agree it was
February
approved
4th.
for advertising. The question was, I think her question was, everybody was there, we were all there when it was approved to advertise. I think Ms. Ziegler's question was it actually advertised?
It was actually advertised, yes. It was advertised for 30 days, and there was no public, we received no public comment on it.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, just to clarify it, and I wanted to just make sure what was advertised is exactly what is being presented for ratification. That's just
Yes, and that's what I'm hearing. Yes.
It is actually still posted on the website, so it is the exact same language.
Okay.
That's Catherine Capoza.
Okay.
Yes. Catherine, you came out of nowhere.
I did. I don't have a way to turn on my video. I'm sorry, everyone.
That's fine.
All right. All those in favor of the motion on the floor, please say yes. Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye. Nay. No.
Okay. So the motion passes 3-2. Item 40, please.
Move that the charter renewal application for Sky Academy be approved subject to the agreed upon provision. Oh, I'm sorry, my mic wasn't on. I move that the charter renewal application for Sky Academy Englewood be approved subject to the agreed upon proviso that the ESE audit will be conducted by the staff of the 5th year of the charter, and the continuation of the charter will be continued upon the school's compliance with the board policies and statutes.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Robinson?
I'm very thankful that Sky Academy agreed to the caveat that I proposed, and for that reason, and that reason only, I'm going to be voting to approve the charter application.
Any other discussion? Mrs. Ziegler?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to commend the team at Sky Academy for they didn't have to, but they did, and I think that's indicative of their willingness to raise the bar and hold themselves accountable for the best interest of our students. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate staff working on amending that. So thank you. And Mr. Robinson for the recommendation.
No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? And the motion passes 5-0. Item 41.
I move that the new job description for Business and Financial Services Manager, Suncoast Technical College, be approved by the board as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, the like sign. The motion passes 5-0. Item 42,
Move for approval of the new job description, Investigator of Human Resources, as presented.
Second.
any discussion? All those in favor? Mrs. Brown.
I know we need to update the job description for the Investigator for Human Resources, but were we waiting for, or what is the status of that company that's doing the rewriting that policy for us? And they were going to come back with talks about, and we were even looking at having a investigator that would report to the board.
Yes, we have had a preliminary meeting with Kroll. We have a draft report. It will be discussed at your workshop on the 16th, and the adoption of the proposed policy changes for advertising will also be on your agenda for June 16th.
June 16th? No, I'd almost want to wait for our new superintendent to have a hand in that, but okay, thank you.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yeah, I think Mrs. Brown, thank you for bringing that up. That's what I thought of as well. Was curious what that time frame looked like. And again, I understand that a lot of things have changed in the last couple of months. So as far as timeline, is it advantageous to wait even on this particular one, pending what that those recommendations say?
I think the largest recommendation is to have a Title IX coordinator, not necessarily an investigator. I mean, the investigators are the people who are going to be doing the legwork that will ultimately be reviewed by someone who holds that title of Title IX or Equity Coordinator for the district. That's currently held by Al Hereda. And I'll let Art talk now.
A couple of points. Obviously, the board can choose to act or not. That's the board's decision. But we are, and I want to clarify, we're expecting to get a report from them by Friday. We asked for it by Friday so that it could get out to the board in advance of the workshop. The biggest reason to move forward now as opposed to wait is so that there can be new policies in place by the end of July. Because if they're in place by the end of July, then we can do training on the new policies before the school year starts. On the other hand, if the board wants to wait, and that's not, an unreasonable thing to do, given we're having a new superintendent, then we're really going to be behind the curve on the training in advance of the school year. So certainly, we've hired this group that has a lot of expertise, and they've done a pretty thorough job, I think. I find it hard to imagine that a new superintendent's going to come and first thing on his or her agenda is going to be to dive into that. Changes can always be made, but I think it's important for the board at least to consider getting the new policy in place so that there can be training done on it in advance of the school year. But that's, the board's call.
Well, I agree with you, Art. We've put this off long enough. This is something that needs to be done. And you can't say you got to wait for the new superintendent with everything. This is key. This needs to be done. Mrs. Ziegler.
Yeah, sorry, just for clarification, I'm actually not suggesting we wait for the new superintendent. I was suggesting perhaps waiting to see what that final report was, to see what recommendations were there. The only reason is because as I think through, I'd just be curious as best practices. And again, I think we could, please, Mr. Hardy, chime in if I'm misunderstanding, but I understand I want to get this rolling, trust me, and particularly for the beginning of the school year. My only question was lining up the job description with the policy. Could that not be done concurrently after we review the recommendations?
Certainly it could, but I don't believe based on the conversations that we've had with Kroll that they're suggesting anything one way or the other with regard to investigators.
No.
As far as job descriptions go.
I think the only recommended position was the coordinator, the person who oversaw all of the issues related to equity, correct?
Right, and that is
Could be somebody who already exists.
right, and we have such a person now, and they have not suggested a particular individual, or nor have they given us any kind of, or nor do I anticipate that they're going to be giving us any kind of job description. They're simply saying someone has to be designated as the district Title IX coordinator. And then I believe they're also going to be
Equity officer.
our equity officer, and then they're going to also be discussing, I think, having an equity officer at each schools, at each location, at each work location, but that there will be one overall person for the district.
I know. Wait, Mrs. Brown.
Reading the attachments on this, the justification, it says that these positions are being converted from classified to administrative to ensure administrative responsibilities are able to be completed during the investigations, and that this will ensure compliance with the collective bargaining agreement and clauses related to progressive discipline.
Correct.
I just wanted to make sure when I asked the question, where are we in that other process? And so I can see why we want to convert this from classified to administrative. The other question was just out there, so I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. The individual who currently sits in the one position is a classified employee. So he is now, at the end of this year, if we didn't approve this job description, he would be unemployed. And the budget has 2 investigators, both administrative, so that they can do the additional functions. Right now, everything has to be done by Mr. Herrera. And so this allows them some more capacity within those areas also.
Thank you, Mrs. Cochran. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, and the motion passes 5-0. Any announcements or communications from anyone? Mrs. Brown?
Well, I just don't think that we can thank our staff enough, and I'm talking about, Superintendent Corcoran and, our executive directors for elementary and high school and our assistant superintendents and all the work that they have been, and our staff on site have been doing, and what our teachers have been doing to reach out to these students. And I know we've got teachers that are saying, well, what am I supposed to be doing? But they have to understand, I mean, it's more frustrating, I'm sure, for you than it is for us and for parents and for the teachers. And I mean, so I know I'm frustrated, and I just can't imagine how frustrated you are. And I hope that knowing that we have your backs will help alleviate some of that stress, because I have to keep telling myself that. I do. I really want to thank you, and please, parents and teachers and staff, try to understand what it is our administrators are trying to work through. We don't know all the questions. We don't have all the answers, but we're trying to do as best as, I say we, you are trying to do as best as you can, and I really, really appreciate that.
Any other comments? The next monthly workshop session is scheduled for June 16th at 9 a.m., and the next board meeting is scheduled for June 16th at 3 p.m.
And there will be a special meeting potentially on June 11th at 9 a.m.
What about the
Thank you, Mr.
search
Hardy.
committee?
That's part of the work, yeah.
The search committee is starting at 6, which also can be watched online.
Yep.
We are adjourned. We can keep on talking. Bye. Bye, Bridget.
Brandon's here.
Orientation was.